I'm hydrated.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Paradigm Shift podcast. I am your host, Nick. Today, we are joined by Mark and Chuck and a new participant, Christina, who will be introducing herself in a second. So this week has been eventful, to say the least. Lots and lots of stuff have happened, including a big story about Trump's tax returns. We finally found out some info there after 5 years of wondering what the hell was going on. And I think it wasn't a huge surprise. And then there was the debate, which we did a live show and we discussed a little bit on there, but that was a unbelievable shit show for anybody that watched it. It was terrible. And then the president got COVID-19. Which was just
2020. What's up, baby?
That's it, man. And all of this stuff happened in a period of probably 6, 7, 5 days or something. So it's a lot of news. So we're just going to do a current events episode again. I feel like there's plenty to talk about. And so, Christina, usually when I have people introduce themselves, I just have them, say, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. And you can talk about, if you'd like, you're not obviously obligated to, what your political affiliation is, because I'm actually interested, because I've seen you write some stuff. You seem to be a little bit independent-y, progressive-y, but I'm not entirely sure. And usually I can tell right off the bat, because people tend not to have very ambiguous political affiliations these days. So go ahead.
Well, I am. I'm pretty much in the center. I am independent, and I'm a woman. So I'm, it's the trope of I'm socially liberal, but there used to be, increasingly less now with the current president, but there used to be some things on the right that resonated with me. But I'm really right in the center, and I'm not thrilled with any of our options this year. So it's kind of easy for me to sort of go above the fray, because I'm like, neither of these men speak to me. Mm-hmm. So I can kind of just step back and go, kind of throw up my hands and say, well, this is neither of them are for me.
So that's sort of what I got out of one of your comments on Facebook.
The one where I said, I hate both of these men.
Yeah.
Nick is so excited. He's so lonely in the center that
there's nobody.
I actually think that there are more. I think that there are more of us secretly in the center than are, because the people who are either hard or hard left are really willing to come out and just fly that flag. And I think that a lot of times people that are in the center, especially in this climate, and I think it's just continuing to become more and more divisive. I think the ones in the center are kind of like, I'm just not really, I don't want to say anything, because I can't take a stand one way or the other and like be really hardcore. So I think there are secretly a lot of us in the center.
I actually agree with you. And I think that the polls, especially with the Democrats, I think there's a lot of very center-left Democrats. We saw that in the primary because Biden won, and he's considered more center than Bernie Sanders, right? So one more question. And I'm just wondering, why do you hate Biden? I don't know if you hate him.
I mean, I reject the old white male thing, and I just wish that we could have put up someone who was different.
I can hear you.
I'm sorry.
I'm right here.
No, but no offense to white men, but I just feel like let's just do something different. And for me, like a good libertarian candidate would be interesting, or I don't know, but
See, now you're
there's
just
no
pandering to
one.
Chuck.
Yeah, I know.
I want you all to
When
like
do I
me.
get my bone thrown to me?
Oh, Mark, I produce
As a libertarian,
podcast.
I can assure you there are no good libertarian candidates. Libertarianism is an idea, not a political party.
Oh, Jordan.
See, well, right, but I mean, so there's I don't know. He just
By the
he
way,
doesn't speak to me.
Ed-
However, I will say that his response to Trump getting COVID really does reinforce that he's a decent human being. I have nothing
No.
personal against him, but I think he's very classy. I think he has taken the high road, and I think he's an excellent human being. I don't know that he really represents my interests.
I just want to really reinforce what she just said, because I've been saying this. When Biden does things like that, the entire left of social media goes insane. They call him a coward, or they say that he needs to fight back, need fire with fire. But I feel like people who aren't crazy, actually, like normal people, they hear that and they
can
think
still hear you. I'm right here.
sorry,
It's been a rough one.
crazy old man demographic.
No, it's true. Agreed.
So I will point out to Christina what I told her in person the last time she said this, which is the last presidential election, you had a old white female, not an old white male.
Oh, well,
And the two previous presidential terms before that, I don't think that guy was white. So, I mean, it is, I understand the inclination not to, support that demographic because they've been in charge for so long. But here's the thing, there's still a significant portion of the country and of the power structure and of the political structure, and you're going to see old white men sometimes, and you just, I mean, obviously you should decide whether they're a good guy or a bad guy, not just old white man, hold my nose, whatever. But, we have at least recently had a certain amount of diversity in our candidates. When I say we, I mean, not the Republicans.
Yeah.
So big news, Chuck. Did you just see it? Trump has left the hospital.
Okay, they said they were probably hours away from that earlier, but
he was in. I just saw something where he was in he was in Marine One and waving to people.
okay,
So
good for him. It was weird when I first got word, like everyone else did, I guess, Friday evening, that he had come down with COVID-19. My reaction was, for a few minutes, it was genuine concern. I mean, the guy is 74 years old. He's overweight. Yeah, I mean, that's
low income.
Yeah, well, yeah, as the New York Times said. Yeah, and he was in so many risk groups. But, as the weekend went on and as the news and information from this and the reaction to this fell into its predictable patterns, I just got to where I didn't care. Now, I was concerned at first, and I guess once it became obvious that he was going to survive this, now I'm wondering if he is going to don a metaphorical Superman's cape and say, look, folks, this COVID-19 ain't that bad. A 74-year-old guy just kicked its butt in 2 days. Let's get moving here. Let's go. Now, that depends on just how bad this was. If he has some underlying fatigue issues or whatever, then he would not do himself any favors if he went out in public in a couple of days and was really, really showing the effects of it. His words would be very hollow then. But I'm wondering, again, if because he turned around from this, if he's going to try to use that as proof that COVID-19 is not as bad as some are saying, or is he going to be a little more muted for the next couple of weeks? That is to say,
you mean could Trump be
for
humbled?
a flip a little bit more than we know?
Could he be humbled? I don't think
so.
so.
No, not humble. Oh God, no. He would be dead before humble.
That would be a very smart political move. He's just not a good politician. But it would be very smart for him to come out now and say, you know what, mea culpa. I was wrong. I should have been more careful. I should have been doing social distancing. I mocked Joe Biden in the debate for wearing a mask, and then I came down and I should have been wearing it. That would be a smart move. I just don't,
That's why he's not going to do it.
He's not going to do it. His base wouldn't switch from him, but he might be able to showing that kind of humility and self-awareness, for which he is not well known, I think
I've
might
always
play.
said if he would have been just a half decent human being, not a decent human being, just a half decent human being for the last 3 years pre-COVID, when we had, by anybody's estimation, a very good economy. Everyone's 401ks were doing all righty, stock market and all that. If he had just been a half-ass decent human being, he'd have had 65% approval. He would have been a shoo-in. But because he is not a half-ass decent human, he is a full-ass non-decent human, it was polled at about 45% consistently. And again, he's 74 years old. He's not going to change. There's going to be no Trump pivot that we were wondering about in the 2016 election. He is who he is. And it's just a matter of degrees. And again, I'm going to pay close attention this week to his rhetoric, the nonverbal cues that he gives, because again, from what we know about COVID, he may have been hit in some other way that at the very least is going to knock the starch out of you for the next couple of days. You're not going to have your energy.
When he was,
we'll see. Yeah.
When he did his little press thing the other day, when he was signing a paper that was actually blank.
Yeah.
Okay, so, he looked awful. I mean, he didn't look like he was going to die, but he was pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a hard time believing that he's going to recover that quickly, but I guess he could. I mean, he certainly has the best healthcare in the world. As far as his, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, so it looks like that he is reacting to his chief of staff's proclamation or announcement that things were pretty dicey there for a while, right? Because he was reportedly very angry that Meadows, is that the guy's name? I forget.
Yeah.
So yeah, that he announced, he had his pulse ox dived and, dove rather. And we had to, we're concerned and he's not out of the woods yet. So he can get pretty good care in the White House, right? I mean, and I think this is, if nothing else, a testament to what you can do with healthcare if you have unlimited resources, right? He was given all the things. He had, the antibody replacement. I mean, whatever. He had all the best treatment, and they'll be able to monitor him. I think he is pushing this though to get out of there because he wants to change that narrative. He doesn't want to be the sick president. So, and it could be way early. Everybody I know in the healthcare industry is kind of like scratching their head, like, yeah, nobody else would be, allowed to be out of the hospital if they were sent there with, below 90% pulse ox and, fairly serious, a fever, et cetera. They would still be in the hospital, but they can move a hospital into the West Wing. I mean, into the residence rather. So that's not going to be a problem for him.
Yeah, it's not like he's going to moving into a wooded area in the middle of nowhere. He's going to have very good health care at the White House. Yeah.
I'm curious about how what his plan going forward though, in terms of like public appearances and things like that, because I mean, he can't just go home after however many days in the hospital and now be back out talking to people and being with people. He's got to be quarantined for 14 days at least on the low end. Yeah. So, how, if he does that, if he just goes, oh, I'm fine now and I'm gonna, that would be crazy. That would be, but of course it's.
Well, that's a great question. I didn't even think about that. I mean, what does he do? If he went out and he campaigned, that would look awful. I don't think he's going to play video games, so he could.
No, but he's going to tweet.
Yeah, really.
Which, by the way, he's been very muted on that.
He has. That's why I thought he actually was sick. Because at first I thought, well, maybe they're moving, because they said out of an abundance of caution. And I can't remember if it was Nick on your Facebook page or where it was, but I was reading someone speculate that perhaps he was, because he was feeling so out of control, he was exacerbating things with like anxiety issues, and they wanted to keep him in the hospital and under observation for those reasons, to try and keep him calm and under control, because he was, well, I mean, he's a control freak. So can you even imagine how crazy this must have made him to be sick? That, I mean, it must be just beyond his capacity for understanding. So I'm curious. I'm curious about what direction he's going to take here, because he can't go out. He can't go out running around and meeting with people and having fundraisers and doing. He's got to stay quarantined.
He thrives off of that.
Yeah,
so that's going to drive him nuts. Especially
he'll be tweeting like crazy.
Yeah, especially when you have an election in 30 days now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is the heart of the campaign season right now, and the heart of his campaign is those personal appearances. Yeah.
What is it? Is he 14 points? Is that what I read today? It may have changed since I read
10,
that, but
I think
that was an NBC.
Right at double digits, yeah.
So I'm not sure what the aggregate is that he's behind. I think it's definitely higher than it was, but he's doing worse than he was a week ago. So like after the debate, there's been a lot of polls that have come out, and he definitely lost some ground, which typically wouldn't be that big of a deal if it's like 1 or 2 points. But in this situation, because Trump is who he is and the polls never fluctuate at all, really, hardly, when there is a small fluctuation, it's a pretty big deal, especially when you're this close. But so if a lot of political pundits, journalists, idiots, I think they're idiots, are coming out and making these. Actually, the guy from Reason Magazine came out, one of the journalists, which I like that. I know you do too, Chuck. I think it's a good outlet. But he came out and he said, "I'll say it right now, Trump is going to lose." And I'm just like, all right, guys, let's back up. We got 30 days to go. We have, who knows what's going on with the polling? Who knows if there's any issues with that in-state polling in these states, right? Especially like Pennsylvania. I think it's way too soon to be making these concrete statements. And if I was a public figure, and I'm not, but if I was, I would not want to be that guy who came out 30 days ago and made this solid prediction, and then it turned out not to be true, right?
I think if we can take one lesson away from polling in 2016, it's that the polls are not always right. Yeah, I've had some people try to explain to me, well, technically, Chuck, the polls in 2016 were correct insofar as ... No, every one of the polls had Hillary winning, and they had her winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, any Rust Belt state, the so-called Democratic Wall. They had her winning that with comfortable margins, and not only was one of them wrong, they were all wrong. So I know they have changed methodology since 2016. There are more cell phones and the like that they contact. I think in 2016, it was still primarily a landline phenomenon when somebody called someone for a poll. I know they have changed their methodology somewhat.
There's a reason for that, yeah.
Yeah, at the very least, we have to look at it with a jaundiced eye. Now, again, that's all we have to look at. Otherwise, we just, speculate, count yard signs or whatever, which is quite unscientific.
So here's what I would say about polls. First of all, they have a margin of error for a reason, right? I mean, you can say, the Patriots are favored to win the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl. It just means it's the most likely outcome.
Right.
And 2016 was a weird electoral year, right? There were a lot of things that were very hard to, kind of figure into the calculus, how unpopular Hillary was among a fairly, large number, what the turnout would be with Trump's base, who may not have turned out as much before. But there's a margin of error for a reason. And yes, they did miss the boat in state polling. National polling was spot on, right? I mean, it was within, 0.2% or something like that. But the state polling was obviously, not as good. And that's typical, right? I mean, the state polls are just not as reliable, or it doesn't have as large a sample, et cetera. And you're right about the cell phone landline. And the reason is because it is illegal to robocall cell phones. So it's expensive to do a cell phone poll versus a landline poll, which is why they did fewer of them.
Oh boy.
I know. Wow, that was a grammatical fumble there.
Have another glass of wine. It just gets
maybe
better.
Too. But here's I have a poll. I would like to poll you three and say, will Biden debate again?
Absolutely.
Well, of course he would, but will Trump be able to?
Will he do like
With-
the North Carolina Senate candidate and have the robo plastic thing? I don't know if y'all saw that this weekend. In the
Jamie
North Carolina
Harris.
Senate.
I did see that.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
awesome.
The Democratic candidate came out with this plastic partition.
He
over
looked like
top of him.
a black pope. I mean,
Like
it was
the
I thought it
Pope-mobile,
was
exactly
awesome.
what he looked like.
Yeah,
It
I
was,
thought it was awesome.
and obviously, I mean, and of course, I mean,
if
he
you
was
were
sending
Biden,
a message
would you
with that
debate
too,
again?
yeah.
If you were Biden, would you
Sure.
debate again?
Sure, he has nothing to lose because he came out of that looking better than
Oh,
Trump.
he has lots to lose because he's ahead.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but Trump isn't gonna change his spots. Trump is gonna go the same way that he went, and he lost ground out of this last debate.
Nick,
So
you're
if
Biden.
I'm Biden,
Nick, you're
I'd
Biden.
totally do
Are you
it.
debating?
If I were Joe Biden,
Right. Come on, Jack. Take your sunglasses off.
I mean, I think there's two things. The first thing is if he didn't debate, he'd be obviously criticized. People might not like it. They may think that he's trying to sort of hide. But at the same time, I think the danger is probably bigger. I probably wouldn't, because Biden goes on these tangents. One of the things that Trump wasn't letting him do by interrupting him repeatedly was go on one of his, I'm trying to be a dick, old man tangents,
Right.
where he kind of goes and goes and goes. And that's when he makes these gaffes. He talks about nothing. He starts off with airplanes and he's talking about, olives at the end of it. I mean, it's what he does. And the fact that Trump kept interrupting him was sort of cutting him off and making it so he didn't do that, didn't gaff up. But there's a good chance that he risks doing that. And that I think is a huge danger for him, because that's like one of his biggest weaknesses, is that people aren't really sure he's up to the job. And when you have those undecided people who are kind of on, in the middle, I think that's where he could get in trouble.
And I'll say this, if there truly is an energy issue with Biden, his handlers have to feel like they did okay in the first debate. He looked like he had less energy than he did 8 years ago. I mean, who among us does not? But he did not look terrible. I mean, for those of us who are veteran political observers, he's older now. He's not quite as spry, but he came off, looking okay. Now, his handlers will presumably know if there is something to these concerns about fatigue and general alertness. That if that's the case, then yes, they stand to lose a lot in debates 2 and 3, because you never know when that lack of energy or lack of cognitive ability is going to crop up. They might feel like they've got, hey man, he did great in the first debate. Yeah, Trump's disease is perfect. We can just say, no, we're not going to expose our old man to that. And if that is the case, but if he's not, if his handlers are confident in him, I think they would chomp at the bit for a second and third debate. Because
How much more time is there for a second debate?
But there's not. See, that's the thing, because Trump's disease or illness now prevents there to be. I mean, it would be I think the next one is meant to be in 13 days, right? So
Right.
I mean, he's short 1 day of quarantine.
It's 2 weeks after negative tests too.
Oh.
It's not 2 weeks after you get
That's
it
what I was going
first,
to ask.
right? You have to
Right.
be you have to be virus free for 2 weeks.
I mean, I
It's
almost feel like by the time this is all over, the election day he's going to be able to go out like after that. Like it's going to take several weeks for him. He's going to have to get better. Then he's going to have to test negative. Then he's going to have to wait 2 weeks. Like it's not going to, I mean, if he's responsible about it, I don't know.
Well, but see, there's the thing. I mean, when is he going to be?
You're funny.
That's a good joke,
You
Nick.
can always hope.
You want to come on my comedy podcast? That was a good one, man.
That would get a big laugh.
Oh yeah. I mean, and honestly, let's just for a second talk about the spectacle of Team Trump at that debate, right? They had rules, right? Be masked. Not be best, be masked, right? That was pretty basic. And they also had a kind of a on your honor you've been tested, before you came in, which bullshit if he was tested, because they knew about Hope Hicks.
He knew he had it.
Yeah, he knew he had it. Yeah. So, and then a doctor, bless her, comes and offers them masks. And of course they're like, no, we're fine. We're going to be like this. And then just, a day later or whatever it was, 2 days later. And then they have, that's just, to me, that's just, this whole episode has just highlighted the boobery of that administration. They cannot do anything fucking right? So that every president, and I was thinking back to when Reagan was shot, right? Every president is all administrations are gonna downplay the negatives, right? They don't want anybody to think that the president's about to die, right? So they handle that the way they handle it. But of course, the Trump administration fucks it up, right? They send a doctor out who doesn't want to lie for them, but he doesn't have a good answer for when they ask him, oh, did he have oxygen this day? Well, he didn't have any oxygen today. Okay. Did he have oxygen this day? No, he didn't have any oxygen today. Did he ever dip below 90%? Well, he didn't dip below 80%. I can tell you that. And it just highlights how incompetent this whole administration is, because they are not, and everybody likes to make fun of, bureaucrats and lifelong government employees, but these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. And it shows every time they have any kind of crisis. The chinks in the armor are super, super visible.
Yeah, I think that's right. Super incompetent. So from what I understand, the rules were that everybody was supposed to wear masks. And You're right that the debate people, whoever they were, came over to them. They took their masks off. So the Trump, I think his wife, and then chief of staff, and then a couple of other people who were with Trump's entourage, they were sitting in front. They were like the only people in the room who just took their masks off. And when they were offered,
and his spawn, yeah.
And when they were offered them, they said no, we're not going to wear them.
Why not?
Because I think it had to probably do with the public relations thing. That's my, like, they want to be seen, because there's a lot of people on the right who are sort of, they see wearing masks as being weak. And so I think it had to do with that. That's my personal opinion. So anyway, they do this. And then afterwards they go, like a day later or something like that, right? They go to some sort of event in New Jersey where they're just shaking people's hands. They're up in their business, doing all this kind of stuff.
And he 100% knew at that time. I don't know if he knew going into the debate, but by the time he was going to New Jersey for that fundraiser, it was like at one of his golf clubs with his rich friends. And he went, and he 100% knew he had it. He 100% knew.
Yeah.
Just said.
So this was
do we know that? Has that been established?
This is a celebration for the Supreme Court nomination. Yeah.
So from what I understand,
it was in
what I understand, Chuck,
which I used to
been
live there.
confirmed.
It was awesome
that he knew. So
I'm sorry, y'all skipped out on me there. Has it been confirmed the moment that Trump officially found out he had COVID-19?
So the reason I think it's confusing is because when the doctor came out and spoke about it, he gave a different timeline. So the doctor said that Trump had known, I think, for 72 hours. But I think at the time we thought he knew for about 48 hours or something along those lines.
Right.
Yes.
If he knew for 72 hours, I think that would have meant that he had known prior to the debate. And if he had known for 48 hours, he would have known when he was in New Jersey.
That's unforgivable. I'm sorry. I did not know that he knew that far in advance.
Definitely for New Jersey.
Definitely for New Jersey, he knew.
They've admitted it.
Yeah.
Like with Jason Miller was on one of the Sunday news talk shows. He's a spokesman for the Trump campaign. And they asked.
And he said that he knew it before he left. He said that Trump knew before he left to go to New Jersey.
When they asked him about it, I believe his answer was something like, "I don't understand why that happened. You'll have to ask the White." He was trying to like skirt the question.
It sure
they're not denying it. They knew.
Well, because Kaylee the liar, McEnany, told people, they asked her who said it was okay for them to do that event, and she named some obscure, protocol post manager type guy or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. But honestly, if Christie dies, that's on Trump's hand, right? I mean, that's a big guy, right? He's in the hospital right now too, Chris Christie.
He's got asthma.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. I mean, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that I'm so ill prepared in this, but I had not heard this that Trump knew before the New Jersey event that he was positive for COVID-19. If that's the case, obviously he should have stayed the hell at home, and it should have been announced then, rather than going to New Jersey, touching people, hugging people, high-fiving, shaking hands without a mask. That would be one of the most neglectful episodes in American political history. Is
that criminal?
Absolutely asinine. Yes, I would say criminal.
Yeah,
I would say criminal. If you know you've got COVID-19. Now, I've been one, and y'all know this, that I have said that our reaction to this has been a bit overbearing, that it does not match up to the national threat of this. But God damn it, if you have COVID-19, geez, what do you need? I mean, if I found out today I had COVID-19, I would put a seal on the door of my man cave down here, and for 14 days just go to my fridge down here in the basement area. I would not go around anyone, hugging them, shaking their hands. Oy, oy, oy.
So this is what happened.
Okay.
The White House learned of Hope Hicks' positive coronavirus test, who Trump had been with, and exposure to the virus by President Trump and others before Trump arrived in New Jersey. He wasn't officially diagnosed until he left, but they knew that Hope Hicks had been diagnosed. So he was interacting with her, all of this other stuff, knew she had been diagnosed, and went forward with the event anyway, is what happened. And this has been confirmed by Mark Meadows.
If that's the case, that's a little more understanding, but still, it shows zero common sense caution.
But they were the remarks, I think, coming out of New Jersey were that he was sluggish and he was showing the fatigue. Mm-hmm. And my question about all of this is, would we have known about, do you think, because how did we find out about this? My understanding,
broke the story.
A reporter broke the story, right? And it was based on like his appearance and his like sluggishness, and I am wondering, would we have ever known if that hadn't happened? Would the White House have come forward and said something?
Well, I mean, I think maybe because they would have been so afraid of what would have happened if they didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. But I just have never seen this White House be able to hide anything. They leak like,
they're incompetent.
I'm guessing over the past 48 hours, his condition would have been, fairly obvious. Again, if indeed at some point in the last 48 hours he was on oxygen, then at some point in the 48 hours, the press would be asking, "Where's the president? Is everything okay?" "Oh, he's fine. He had diarrhea this morning," or whatever. Mm-hmm. How long can they hold that off? Particularly when you add it up to the immediate aftermath of the sluggish New Jersey appearance, then that I think that would have reached critical mass very quickly. But this is the old what did the president know and when did he know it question that we remember so fondly back in Watergate. Again, if Trump knew going into the New Jersey event that he had COVID-19 or was positive for COVID-19, and he went and made the appearance anyway, that's criminal. To me, that's criminal.
Absolutely.
If
by the way,
he had any reason to doubt that he had it, if he had any reason to doubt his positiveness, then it's not criminal. It's negligent, certainly. So the president was either criminally stupid or negligently stupid. Not a good choice.
What up, Art?
Art.
How are you all doing?
Art.
That's what we're talking about.
So we're just talking about how stupid Donald Trump is, as usual. And
wait, is that a new change? Did it happen? Something happen? Some kind of like flowers for Elton?
He left the hospital.
Okay, all right.
Well, specifically, we were talking about the events that led up to him contracting the virus.
Recklessness.
And what he knew and when he knew it. And so I think it's been confirmed, and I think it's pretty much a fact now that he knew that Hope Hicks had it prior to going to New Jersey. He went there anyway. And from what I understand from press reports, he was really like shaking people's hands, patting them on the back, no mask, not social distancing, sort of like, here, have Corona. So that's sort of, we were just talking about how.
Yeah, basically, my argument was that if he knew going into the New Jersey event that he had Corona and went through with it anyway, maskless, shaking hands, hugging, that's criminal. Evidently, the story is going to be that he knew Hope Hicks had it, but he didn't know he had it until after the New Jersey appearance, in which case he would just merely be negligent, not criminal.
Bullshit.
Now, right now, so that raises a couple of questions, but one would be, doesn't he get tested like almost daily?
Every day.
Yeah.
Okay, so there should be some kind of medical chain of custody as far as like the last time he passed a test. If there's like suddenly this weird mysterious gap between like Monday and Thursday, it's like, oh, we can't find the results. Like, interesting.
But it's also possible he had a negative test, even if he was
Absolutely. No, I mean, what we're talking about is the idea that perhaps he was asymptomatic and thought, hey, it's October. I really can't afford to be down. So let me be asymptomatic, and I'm just going to keep trucking and pretending everything's good. And then he got symptoms, and then he couldn't hide it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's just a theory. It's what we might call a conspiracy theory. But based off of what the doctor said, as far as it being 72 hours, and he had to walk that back to being, well, it's day 3, but not 3 days, even though a normal doctor would never make that kind of mistake. I mean, those timelines are crucial for treatment. Like, I don't know if you know any doctors, but they're like obsessive about timelines. So, whatever. We'll find out in due time. But right now, we're not going to know anything because they're in full cover-up mode, and just, I mean, we can't get a single story out of them. It just, every time somebody walks up in front of a mic, we get a new angle. So
Yeah, and I was talking about how blatantly incompetent this administration is. Like, they can't even do a cover-up. Right?
Oh, no.
I don't even think that it's not even incompetence. I just think that they think that they are above it all, that they they have no accountability or responsibility. I mean, they're not politicians. They're not good politicians, but I think that they just don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I really think. I think they're just
they're
like,
definitely arrogant.
They care about the image. Like, they don't maybe care about the morality, but certainly like they get that there's an image problem they're trying to deal with. I just think it's hilarious that there are people out there who think that like, oh, like Trump doesn't have COVID. This is a big cover up. Like, these guys can't even cover up like a basic like calendar, right, as far as like a chart of like, oh, well, he got sick this day and then this progressed. Like, if you can't even keep a timeline straight when you're writing the timeline, if this is a fake thing you can't even stick to, then like you guys aren't cut out for this. Like, this is the whole conspiracy, the 9/11 truther thing. Like, you aren't bringing down the 2 towers by like controlled detonation. Like, this Trump thing it's not an inside job. This is just these guys stumble fucking their way through everything as they always do.
100% agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's really anybody who disagrees with that, including people in his own administration.
Right.
Art, did you watch the footage, Art, of the event celebrating their Supreme Court nominee and the interactions between all the major administration figures after the event with the hugging and kissing?
There's like 8 people there who have COVID-19 now.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, they have a picture of it.
So there's
Mike
video of
Tom Tillis,
like
Chris Christie,
yeah,
Kellyanne Conway.
Kristi Kreme is in big trouble.
God.
I mean, and Kellyanne Conway was hugging what's his name, Bill Barr, right? Hugged him, and now she has it. She now is tested positive for COVID. So we can only, I guess, wait and see if the worst attorney general in a generation also has it. But
yeah, I haven't seen that much group love since that swingers convention in Vegas. Like, there's really just.
Do you think they had a key party afterwards or something?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all out in the open. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, but this is just the natural kind of result of this sort of thing. And it's just funny because Trump is just normally like the luckiest dumb fuck ever. Like, he just does dumb things and it seems to work out for him.
Yeah.
And you almost thought he was going to get through 2020 never catching COVID. Like, you just somehow he would just be this jackass who did whatever and just it never hit him. Yeah. And this is like, I hate saying karma because it's not what karma is, but this is just a weird like sequence of events led to the kind of consequences where this is exactly what happens when you're
Right.
reckless and a moron. It just, this stuff catches up with you.
And what people don't understand, it's a game of percentages, right? You have a chance to get it every time you expose yourself, and you can reduce that percentage of, you know, the possibility that you're going to get it. And every time you don't, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but there was an old Warner Brothers cartoon where this rabbit or mouse or whatever is testing World War II bombs, right? By hitting it with a hammer.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if it doesn't go off, it goes into the dud pile.
right to
Well,
dud,
eventually
yeah.
he hits one that blows the fuck up, right? It's just a matter of time and a matter of the percentages. And what Trump did, I mean, honestly, it lasted longer than I would have guessed. But keep in mind, he also has, you know, everybody tested around him every day. And even then, he couldn't stay the fuck out of the way of this virus because, you know, they were just so reckless about it. So,
Which is an odd thing, because I guess an odd undercurrent to all this is the fact, or I guess it's the fact that Trump is a germaphobe, self-admitted anyway. So you would think if that were truly the case, then if anyone's going to dodge it, it would be someone who's naturally
right. It's a good point.
worried about germ exposure. But you know, his actions they kind of belie that. I mean, again, he was supposed to have some OCD flavored germophobia, but his actions certainly don't suggest any of that, at least not from what I've seen.
By the way, how's Melania? Does anybody know?
She's fine. She has very mild symptoms.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was going to say she's entirely replaceable. I mean, her warranty's almost up anyway for wife number 4. So
yeah, he's already got his Tinder app loaded up. So
Oh my God.
So I have 2 questions based on this whole debacle. The first one is, do you guys think that, and there's been like a poll or 2 out, but we really don't have any definitive information as of yet, that this situation with him getting COVID could help him at all or hurt him? And do you feel like do you feel like it could be like a positive thing because he comes out?
Just opine that, like, Boris Johnson actually got a bit of a bump, but he was actually extremely ill. Like, there was a period where, like, he legitimately could have died. Like, he was, like, ventilated, like, he was down. And I think that if you get that sick, no matter how much of an asshole you are, there's a weird kind of human instinct where you get a bit of sympathy, no matter who you are. Just, we're kind of wired that way. But Trump's actually going out his way to show that he's fine, and, like, he's riding around in cars and doing videos. And I think that he's kind of undermining any potential, like, deep sympathy triggering that you could get in humans by shrugging it off and being like, hey, like, I'm good, don't worry about me. Whereas, like, Boris Johnson was legitimately like, oh, like, he can't breathe, like, he's machine ventilated. Yeah. He hasn't spoken in days, like, or like a week. I think he went without talking.
Or he's, and this is devil's advocate, and I don't actually think this, but it could present him as being strong and handling it and just kind of sucking it up. And maybe, you know, that gets a positive response publicly.
There's I think something to that, but I think that wouldn't affect people on the fence. Like, his fans will probably feel that, but they're already his fans. Like, I think for a sympathy dump, you'd have to get sympathy for people that normally don't like you, but it's suddenly like, oh, like, gosh, like, he almost died. This is like, you know, really human experience. Like, I know people that have almost died. He almost died. And, you know, no, I don't agree with him politically, but
is that enough to make you vote for him, though? I mean, I feel like you could just go, oh, that's too bad. But that's exactly the other thing, is that even if you get that bit of sympathy bump, I don't think it might change your approval rating, but not your votes. So I think even his best case doesn't really mean anything.
Plus, Trump is not, to say the least, a sympathetic figure. And his appeal has never been anything other than brash, strength, power, you know, everything that he fetishizes. Mm-hmm. He's not skilled enough to generate sympathy, in my opinion.
He doesn't want it.
No,
I don't think
that's
he wants
exactly
it.
Right.
I think he would like the what Art was saying about who said it? Nick. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but said, he might be perceived as
old white guys.
He might be perceived as strong coming through this, right?
Right.
That's the vote that he would want, because he cannot perceive himself as in any way weak. right? Like he total narcissist. He's like, me get sick, I'm not really, I mean, I get this terrible disease and I'm just gonna like blow it off in 3 days, you know, no whatever. So I don't think he wants the sympathy vote. And I think he would probably like go, don't vote for me because you feel sorry for me. Only
Well,
vote
he'll
for me
take all the
because you,
votes. He's not going to turn down any votes.
But that's the
I don't know.
paradox. Yeah, that's the
Right.
paradox. Is that he couldn't do it intentionally. I mean, he's just not smart enough. But
Mhm.
if he went so down that hole that he was on the ventilator and like there was like national news was like, is the president of the United States going to die? Like if he was totally unplugged, he would get sympathy he didn't even want. Like if he was conscious, he would hate it. It would drive him insane. He could get it anyway if he gets that sick, but he's just not smart enough to even fake that. Like he'd never do it. Like Nick was saying, it's the strong man. I'm strong. I'm going to beat this. Like I never get sick.
He'll lose before he admits this. Yeah.
He would lose
Right,
before he
exactly.
admitted it. If he gets it, it'll be accidental. It'll be like hitting the pool ball too hard. You sink something on accident. Like that's all it'd be.
That's interesting.
That's my main strategy, by the way.
Right. So,
There was a moment in all of this where I thought to myself, I wonder if this is an escape hatch for him. I backed off of
thought
that
that too.
because it's like been 3 days and now he's out of the hospital and everything. But I thought, I wonder if this is an escape hatch. He goes down, gets at like kind of goes, I'm incapacitated. I've got to step back, puts Pence in charge, and then Pence pardons him for the hell that is about to rain down on him.
risen
Right?
after
So,
3
like,
days, just like our other favorite.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it, Art.
Donald Christ. Okay.
but that's what I
think
thought
there's
for a
zero,
minute.
I
For a
think there's
minute,
zero
I was
chance
like,
of that happening.
but now I don't think so. No, because he's out of the hospital already.
I didn't seriously consider it, but it ran through my mind. Like maybe it is. Maybe, I mean, he's been super down in polling for a while now, and maybe he's just tired of the job and he just wants his old life back where he could do whatever he wanted.
Now, I do think it was possible that if he was
give up.
really, really, really down and just knew there was no chance, that he would resign and have Pence blanket pardon the shit out of him. I think that is entirely within his character. Whether Pence would go along with that, yeah, he probably would because
He is capable of anything.
Yeah. So I think that is possible, but I don't think he engineered a positive COVID, thing.
I don't
think that's
but it
possible.
crossed my mind.
Yeah, of course, because he's,
Do you think he realizes that he could lose? I mean, because like, is he self-aware enough to realize that he's probably going to lose this?
Yes,
Great
I think
question,
he is,
because he's never really shown that. He's never. I mean, is he just so? Because when he talks about it like it's not even a possibility. The only way I could lose is if somebody cheats.
Yeah.
And then if they don't cheat, then I'm going to win.
but that's his rationalization.
For January, yeah.
Honestly, I think he thought he was going to lose against Hillary. I think he truly thought
absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we could discuss Trump psychology for the next 200 years. It's just so complicated.
In the Woodward books, before like when COVID first came out, he does note that like when that broke, he's like I'm sunk. Like I'll never win re-election now. Like this is all over, especially like in that March period. So I think that Trump, the character he plays on TV, would never ever admit that he could lose. Like it's not the persona, it's not the act. But like behind closed doors, he does seem to have these manic mood swings where he'll be like super up or super down. And like people have said that like he's crazy pessimistic sometimes behind closed door, but once the cameras are rolling, you never see that side of him.
Right. Well, and Art, you remember he said that exact same thing when the impeachment process started, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sunk. This is it. This is the end of my presidency. Not when impeachment. It was when the independent counsel was appointed, which he was not a huge fan of. And he said the same thing. I'm done.
Well, there might be something to that. The Art of the Deal is a pretty good window into his strategies, right? And he says similar things.
It reminds me of
did he write?
It reminds me of the song in Chicago, "Razzle Dazzle." How can they see the sequins in their eyes? I mean, it's an illusion. It's all a game we're playing here, and you're never going to see the real side of me. You will see the persona. You will see the mask. You'll never see the face. And he understands that as well as much as anybody.
Machiavellian. So my other question is, how do you guys think, if at all, this whole COVID-19 thing is going to affect the Supreme Court hearings, because you have 3 senators now who've been diagnosed. They're all over 60 years old, right? No, Mike Lee isn't. Sorry.
No, he's
Tom Tillis is, and Ron Johnson is for sure. So, I mean, do you feel like it could postpone it? I mean, the Republicans are super
Zero chance
on getting.
They
it.
will weekend at Bernie's that lady through.
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
no
that-
doubt in my mind.
But you
This
have to
is-
have
so
those.
this
3
is not a
senators.
Trump
wait,
thing.
no. If they can lose 3.
I
Yeah,
will
this is-
wrap them in a bubble and roll them into the Senate.
Mitch McConnell will get this vote through.
Zero chance he doesn't.
If they have the confirmations via Zoom or face to face,
Do that.
he's not going to. It's not going to bother him one bit.
What
He's
is-
going to get
what
his
is the
51
Zoom
votes,
policy
and
on
it's
confirming
going to happen
judges?
because this is Mitch McConnell's realm.
Yeah. So is that
Yeah, I
something?
don't know how legally binding Zoom meetings are, but if they are, you guys are in big trouble. So
Well, here's the thing. So they have the coronavirus right now. They want to get it done relatively soon, right? So if they started holding hearings, I mean, those people certainly wouldn't be able to go unless they were on Zoom, and they could do something like that, right?
they have until January, whatever. They don't care. They don't care if he's lame duck.
But hold on, except Lisa Murkowski has shown that she's willing to not necessarily vote. Susan Collins has as well.
Bullshit on both of them.
Well, maybe. And for Arizona, they have a different date for when the senator there. So if Kelly wins, which you probably will, in Arizona, he could be seated at the end of November. So if that happens, Murkowski and Collins stayed where they were at in their positions, they'd be in trouble if they didn't have.
Ever failed to disappoint you? Have they ever failed to disappoint you? Either of those two.
Yeah, I still don't know if you'd have enough votes. So it's highly unlikely. I'm just.
Neither of them will do the right thing.
Yeah, I don't think the numbers add up, but it could possible.
I mean, every time we pin our hopes on somebody, Ted Cruz or
Who pins their hopes on Ted Cruz?
Yeah,
Only
well,
one
exactly.
time.
But maybe being maverick enough, considering how Trump treated him like a piece of toilet paper.
He has
during the
consistently
campaign.
failed.
Didn't matter. Snake. Marco Rubio. Hey, we should do this. Well, guess what? Where is he when it's time to vote? Right in Trump's ball sack. I mean, you can't
Well,
depend
hold
on
on.
a single
God,
one.
yikes.
I want to defend Republicans for a second. So
Which one?
I find that there's some holes in this argument where people get like so the idea that because Trump is a bad person, that Republicans should therefore vote against their own interests and their own policies based on what? The fact that they disagree that Trump goes on Twitter too much. So it sort of boggles my mind that the left is like, well, Trump did this, this, and this, so therefore you should vote against a policy that you would ordinarily support. For what? I mean, why would they do that? What Art has an answer.
So what I would say is that there's this idea of forbearance where you don't necessarily play too much hardball because that opens up your enemy to hardball that they normally wouldn't have access to. Like there are some things that are socially permissible and some things that aren't. And when you push your luck, you create a situation where, for instance, like stacking the court, that wouldn't have even been discussable like 2 years ago. It wouldn't even been a thing. Whereas when the GOP pushes their advantage a little too hard, you create the kind of environment where suddenly you're like, oh, well, I guess everything's on the table now. And that's a problem. Like if you're actually thinking about having stable government and not just extending both middle fingers into your opponent's face as hard as you can, as long as you can, then you don't necessarily take every hit that you can get. Like you think about, well, we want to get as much advantage as we can squeeze out of this, but we also don't want to push it so hard that we collapse everything on ourselves. And I think that's where the GOP is that they've lost the ability to self-regulate because Trump doesn't have that. He's going to go for maximum gain every time he can and then try and just avoid punishment.
Well, that's sort of an argument about why they shouldn't necessarily vote for Amy Coney Barrett, but not
right. That's what I'm saying is that they should pick somebody who's more moderate. who wouldn't trigger that kind of pushback.
I
Instead,
think that's a totally
they're
legitimate argument, especially considering that 4 years ago, that was their position of
Yeah.
like 7 different senators.
then that's all I'm saying is that, I even get them trying to replace them, but like, like she's a hardcore, and not to, besmirch her, I don't mean this pejoratively, but, she's, a hardcore evangelical borderline theocrat, like as far as what, her political and personal beliefs are, and inappropriate for the Supreme Court. So especially in a multi, cultural kind of a country like we have, she's just not a good fit. And it's the GOP taking every millimeter of advantage they can to ram somebody through, and it's going to get a pushback that somebody like, a GOP version of Merrick Garland, who's a moderate anyway, wouldn't get. Like, they would be mad about it, but you wouldn't get that, like, oh, like, all the gloves are off. Oh, okay, well, then the gloves are off. When you're heading into electoral disaster, like what the GOP is heading into, you don't want to ride this one in and that be like, you have your enemy be like fully energized and also out for revenge. Like it's just dumb. Like it's overplaying your hand.
Yeah, I'll disagree insofar as I do believe that Democrats would have uniformly opposed anyone that Trump nominated for this position, whether it was ACB or some other appellate judge with a similar, maybe not quite as far right record. But no, this is big. This is the Supreme Court. This is control, de facto control for basically a generation. This is huge. It's been made huge because our government has increasingly gone to the Supreme Court to settle legislative disputes over the past 20, 30, 40 years. We've seen too many legislative questions settled among 9 justices. And because it has gotten so much importance in that respect, appointments to the Supreme Court have become a blood sport. And, if one party's more guilty of that being the case than the other, so be it. But that's happened. And because of that, these nominations have taken on the persona of a gladiator battle in ancient Rome. And this is so, yeah, no matter whom Trump appointed, it was going to be someone at least right-leaning. And I don't think there was a compromise candidate that you suggest could have been nominated that might have gotten some votes from Democrats just because they were moderate. I don't think in this political climate such a candidate exists.
But that's not what I mean. What I mean is that, if you put up a moderate, people are going to be mad about it. They're going to fuss. They're going to hate it. But it's not going to trigger in the broad base of society that sense of, oh, like it's war, like you're gone like all out. Whereas like somebody like Amy Coney.
War. It's already war. I mean,
yeah, I agree with that. I think that the battle lines have been drawn and drawn and I mean, it is really nothing is getting done. And I think that this kind of decision just further entrenches people who are really locked in on one side or the other. I think I completely agree with Chuck.
So can I just say something else, sort of piggybacking off of what Chuck said?
You're done.
No, I can't. So the Republicans actually have an incentive here that we're not considering, and that is that the populace is leaning over the next 10 years heavily towards Democrats and the left. You see that in Texas, and you see that throughout the country, the younger people, the growing Hispanic population, et cetera, right? So by cementing, the power in the court, knowing how much legislative power, honestly, right, the court has these days, like Chuck was saying, this is in their best interest. So from that perspective, and this is in response to your point, Art, it makes sense for them to take such a solid stand, just from a sort of cold strategic position as they are in the situation. Because if they let this go, or if they put a moderate on, somebody who isn't necessarily, because they've put lots of moderates on, right? Lots of moderates have been on. Reagan nominated, and Andrew Day O'Connor, and Kennedy as well, who, ruled in a lot of ways that Republicans didn't like. So they probably feel obligated, to protect their interests for the next 20 or so years, or however long, by putting it all on the line here. So I think to them, that for that reason, it's probably worth it. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. Go ahead, Art.
I was just going to say that, but this is my point, is that when you operate like that, where you think about the long term and you put moderate people on, that's not going to jar anything. Yeah, you have people that maybe tilt a little bit left or a little bit right, but you don't put on hardcore, like partisan, like, I just say extremists. Nobody has, like, this is kind of a new development in the court. We haven't really had a hard anything court for quite a while. So this is overplaying your hand. Like, I understand what the GOP's reasoning is, but the problem is that opens up, to a backlash, which is going to be much more than if they had just not overplayed their hand and took modest, advancement rather than overreach. I mean, overreach is what gets people to authorize people to then overreach back. Whereas normally, like, most of America is sadly like you. They like moderation. They don't like rocking the boat. And as long as you don't rock the boat too much, they don't really want either the left or the right.
Was that
No, that was directly aggressive. I was directing it to you. But what I'm saying is that really get what they want in America, because most people just don't want it. They're more or less clustered in the middle in one way or the other, and they don't truck to that. They just don't want it. Whereas if you push too hard to one side and the public sentiment's like, oh, the boat tilted too far, that's when public sentiment authorizes the boat to tilt the other way. And that's what the GOP is setting themselves up for. And this idea that, oh, we'll be good for 30 years if we just ram this through, that's not how America works. Like, if you push too hard to one side, there's always a pushback.
But I don't think they feel like they have a choice, is my guess.
Okay.
Well, they see in it, but I think the thing is that that's the death knell then for them, because if they push too hard and it just becomes this push and this push. Look, actually, Art, before you came on, Nick and I were chatting about, well, like, I'm more centrist, and but I tend to lean.
I like her anyway, but I mean, that's the problem.
I tend to lean.
It's like centrist bigotry. That's what this
is. Well, but Art just said there's a huge ton of people that are much more moderate and in the middle.
Yeah, I agree.
We're not being loud about it.
I am.
There's not a loud voice about it.
Nick is so loud.
But
here's talking.
Here's my point. Someone pointing her to the court is gonna make me say no Republicans getting my vote, because that goes against what matters to me. I'm worried about Roe. I'm worried about what's the case for marriage equality, right? Those things I'm socially firmly on the left on those things, and so. I see that happening, and I think to myself, okay, if that's what they're going to put up, they're going to lose my vote. There's no potential for them to get.
Oh, you're declaring here and now that you're going to vote for Joe Biden. That's what I just heard.
Well, I mean, no, but and here's the other thing.
If not, I may have to reconsider our business relationship. So
here's the thing though, that also I think comes into play because of oddly enough, because of the mail-in. Everything that happens, because people are voting now. So every little thing that happens, even though usually as you get closer, there are things that happen, like jobs reports come out, like the last one before the election or whatever it is. And those are like potentially big trigger points for undecideds. Now, because everyone's, kind of voting all along in this lengthy process of voting, any of these things can swing people where before it wouldn't necessarily have had that big of an impact. So something like this, yeah, I am watching it.
By the way, there's zero chance the Republican Party will die. Zero chance.
I don't think they'll die, but
we
are going to have to go through a massive.
We are locked into a two-party system for as long as you can imagine. There's no chance for a third party.
I think that's a good thing, because all the options for third party are.
You don't want to be Italy?
No.
I
love Italy, but no.
I feel like
no, but
this is.
But with winner take all voting, you'll never have anything other than two parties ever.
Yeah, this is like an instant spot test for somebody who's a political hustler or a moron, is if they're like, you know what, the duopoly is the problem and we need to get third parties and we need this and that. Like, no, you don't. Like, if the entire Democratic or Republican Party vanished tomorrow, you would have two parties in a week. Like, that's just how the structure is. Everything is mathematically geared toward there being two parties in this current arrangement.
Our very system of checks and balances and everything else is geared like you said, if you got rid of both Democrats and Republicans tomorrow, we would have Whigs and Tories a week from
I'm
now.
rooting for
Same
Bull Moose.
dividing lines and whatnot. Yeah.
How about the Libertarian Party?
Yes, and
Libertarians will never. You know what?
Libertarian is not a party; it's an idea. It's a way of
Chuck,
thinking. It's not a.
Chuck, can
political
you cover
party.
your ears for? Can you cover your ears for just a second?
yeah, Kermos.
Nobody wants to live under a libertarian system, including libertarians.
Ah!
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't cover that.
there'll never ever be a libertarian party in the U.S.
You don't think a Libertarian candidate could win?
No.
It's hard to
10%.
win when you tell people you're going to take their cookies away.
Yeah, 10%. 10% is their max.
What about a
Uh,
left-wing
turnout.
Libertarian?
Nope.
That's impossible.
I don't even know what that is, but
No,
no.
neither do the people who call themselves left-wing Libertarian.
No,
I don't even know.
that's
Yeah,
like
I don't know what that means.
that's like a Christian atheist.
Yeah.
It cannot.
Like, I like
It's-
Christ, but I don't believe in him. Yeah.
It's really not, but that's a discussion for another time. You guys aren't ready for that.
Probably not.
There's a
Art is a
You're right.
left-wing Libertarian.
yeah, I'm a left libertarian, and you know,
No, you're not.
no, I am. It's actually the original libertarianism was all left leaning. So this is just this weird like abomination
is
that it's
true.
mutated into.
I should have had Art
Yeah,
close
I mean-
his ears too.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
in terms of modern context, the way left wing is determined today. In the day, left wing meant pro free speech, pro individual liberty. Today, that is anathema to the modern American left wing, who
It's really not. That's just a
relies
weird
on
right wing spin
government.
you guys have. Like I
No,
got
it's-
nothing. That's just you listen too much Breitbart.
No, it's,
Like it's
if you're truly left wing in America today, you favor the collective over the individual in general, not all the time. If you're left wing in the United States today, you favor a greater degree of government control, not a smaller.
no, this is
degree
just
of
you
government
saying what other people
Yeah.
think based off of what some people have told you. That's not what people actually think.
Bring in the heat. It's been my experience.
Okay, but all right. So the reason that we have a state is to have a structure where rights can exist. So if there's no state, if there's no government, there's no rights. You may have some license,
the
you may have
rights
some
still
local power.
exist. The rights still exist. The government's job is to secure the rights.
Okay, but that means it doesn't exist. Like that's like saying that
No, it
like,
does.
you know,
Yeah, the
Pokemon doesn't
rights
exist
exist.
if there's no artist to draw Pokemon. Like
Rights
you-
exist with or without the existence of government.
okay, but that's theology. Like I'm talking practice.
It's not really theology either. It doesn't have to be. I know the Christian believes the rights come from God. I believe they're natural rights, more in the sense of John Locke.
Okay, but that's just a philosopher that said things. Like what I'm saying is that in a practical sense.
I mean, that's what we do, Art. We say things.
No, but that's
We
what
drink
But
and we say things.
we drink and we say things. What I'm saying is that if it's not backed up by guns, it doesn't matter. So like you can have the right to free I don't know jet skis or whatever. But like if you go to the jet ski dock and you don't get a jet ski, then you don't really have a right to. No matter if in your heart you feel like I have a right to ride any jet ski that I run across. Like it's not a thing unless it's enforced. So the
Okay,
reason that we
Really, no, it's not willy nilly. And again, a good litmus test on rights is rights cannot be something that someone here and now has to give you. Because if they can give it to you, they can take it away. And if they can take it away, it's not really a right. Rights
Okay,
are
let's say
Imagining jet ski warlords. Right
All right,
now.
but let's say free speech, or a right to own guns. Let's say you have a right to own guns and you're not allowed to own guns. And if you own a gun, somebody comes and takes it away from you. Like, do you have a right to own guns? If you don't have a...
rights still exist, it's just not being protected. It's not
Okay.
being secured.
So let me rephrase this then. To have any right in a practical sense rather than a theoretical sense, you need a state to enforce it. Fair?
Not necessarily. No, because now if the state is going to, if state's going to take it away, then we would need some mechanism to enforce it. But left to our own desires, without the existence of a state, would I still have that right? Yes, we have the right to do most anything we feel is in our interest of self-defense, as long as it does not infringe upon some other person's ability to live or to exercise self-defense. Now, if that is true with or without the existence of a state, that is true.
Okay, but it's just an opinion. Like I'm saying that without a state, you're just talking about like, my opinion is that I have this right. It's not that you have that right. You just feel like you should. Like that's not the same thing as having a mechanism.
And if that-
When you say
and
a
if that is the-
mechanism, that's a state. Like, it doesn't matter how. If there's some way to enforce your belief, that's a state.
That's not to enforce my belief; it's to secure my belief.
Okay, well,
That's
secure
a
and force, it's the
completely
same
different
thing.
mechanism. In that sense, the state is irrelevant as to whether or not my rights exist. Now, my rights can be secured by a successful operation of a state, but the state's existence is not necessary for the existence of my rights. The rights are there. The rights are natural, or if you're a Christian, given to you by your creator. Government's main job is to secure. If I'm not there, I still have my rights. It's just
okay,
a question of how they're going to be secured.
All right, but I'm just saying, in like a scientific sense, like you couldn't run an experiment and say, well, based off of the result of this experiment, I have this right. You know what I mean? Like, there's no verifiable way to prove the existence of a right. It's a right.
Holding back. So I was a philosophy major in college, which I think I've announced before.
You guys
And
know
really,
that
all
Mark
that does
was a
is make
philosophy
me,
major?
yeah. And all it makes me do is be good at arguing, honestly. But one of my lofty goals I had, undoubtedly, I'm sure, as a sophomore, because that's when you have these things, right, was to come up with an objective, non-religious base for morality. And rights would be included in that, right? Personal rights, et cetera. And my determination was, in my, brilliance in that year, was that you couldn't do it. Really, rights and manners and mores are all polite fictions that we agree to adopt. And without any kind of structure over the top, and they're somewhat arbitrary, right? I mean, there's nothing natural about owning a firearm. Right? I mean, that's not inherent to the human experience.
But it is natural to defend oneself.
Sure. Okay. But again, and there's nothing natural about not allowing the military to billet in your household. Things like that. Those aren't natural in the sense of, I'm entitled to the integrity of my person and all that stuff. There's really no objective way, because if people can disagree with you and have a different opinion, it's probably not objectively true. Right? I mean, not that many people will disagree about, what 4 times 4 is, but they will disagree on whether or not you're allowed to have a bazooka. So,
right.
Although maybe with flat Earth, maybe 4 times 4 isn't 4. 16.
We can disagree on the extent of rights and the scope of rights, but I'm hoping we don't disagree on the existence of rights.
Well, we don't, because we've all bought into it, right? I mean, we're social creatures. We bought into this idea that, hey, we live in this society, and I agree to respect these things, and you agree to do the same. And then, but as Art pointed out, that means nothing if we don't have some way of regulating and enforcing that, right?
No,
I mean, whether it's the village elders, or a council or the Senate or whatever it is, we as humans seem to need some structure other than just a gentleman's agreement that we're going to recognize and respect these rights.
And I understand that. It works better when you have a good moral entity to secure those rights. But the rights are still there regardless of whether that entity exists. One of the things people mistakenly attribute to me is anarchy. I'm not an anarchist. In a nation of 330 million people, we're going to need something or other to settle disputes, enforce contracts. It's too damn big and complicated to have us all just run around without some kind of structure. But the rights exist regardless of whether the state exists.
Are there chimp rights? Buffalo rights?
No, they did not have higher thoughts that we are aware of. Sorry.
Dolphin rights? I don't know. Pig rights? They're pretty smart.
The point.
Have no rights.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Well, me, well, I do need some kind of an apparatus that is going to protect, because we all have rights. The rights exist, but then there's going to be a dominant portion of society that will then potentially oppress rights of others, right? Yeah, so I mean, slavery is the big, that's one of the examples that kind of popped into my mind as you were talking.
Sure.
And they had their rights, They did have a right to their
Our
freedom,
government was not securing them.
but the government failed them, right? So and in fact, the government conspired to oppress them, and for a long
If
time.
they never had those rights, then we were under no moral obligation to free them.
No, we definitely were,
Rights
so I'm agreeing with you that there are natural rights, but I am also I'm on the other side of the fence as well, saying, but in order
You're
for
right
everybody's,
on top of that fence, girl.
when other people's rights need to be protected, you can't rely on the dominant group in a given society to be like, let's be altruistic, let's take care of them and make sure that everybody's rights, because we aren't altruistic. We're individualistic, and we want what we want. We want to protect our rights and what we perceive as our rights. And if you were a white Southern landowner, you thought your right was to own a black person and make them work for you for free.
And again, the main crux of my argument here is that the rights exist regardless of the existence of government. The reason I argue that so vociferously is that to believe otherwise is to believe that rights come from government. And that is very, very poisonous, I believe. Rights are there, whether or not government's there. And again, in a nation of 330 million people, I sure the hell would not suggest that we try to do this without some form of government. It's too big, too complicated. But again, the rights are there regardless of the existence of government. And
I think that's complicated metaphysics.
Right? All right, but no, but it's really not complicated at all. Like if you take like the People's Republic of China, you don't have rights there, and that's not because you should have rights or don't, or maybe you don't but should, but you just don't. The government
have rights, but they're not being secured by their government.
No, you just don't have them. Like the thing is that if America was run the way that the People's Republic of China was, we just wouldn't have them. This is the point of left libertarianism: is that you can talk philosophy and esoterics and all that metaphysics all you want, but in a practical sense, if you don't have a government that enforces and protects your rights, you don't have them in any measurable practical sense. So
if
from a very
we should never ever push for freedom in China, but we do. Why?
No, because we have a philosophical,
because their rights are not being secured, and that's wrong.
But that's just philosophy. Like this is just the belief. That's not like integral to our existence. We just like it that way. Like that's what I'm saying, is that this is preference we're trying to secure.
Did you just say philosophy wasn't important?
No. I said that. No, I said that philosophy is important. That's why we do it. Is that we believe that we should have it, but you can't. The belief by itself doesn't matter. Like in a scientific, measurable sense, if you have a government, if you have two governments and one believes that you should have rights and one doesn't, it means that in a practical sense, some people have rights and some people don't. Now,
you can argue there are people in China who do not believe that they have a right secured, to bear arms,
and the other is not having their rights secured. They both have rights.
Oh, but that's just opinion. I'm saying philosophy, utilitarianism. So in a very utilitarian sense, it doesn't matter whether you have them or not if they're not secured. Like you can say that it matters, but I don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me if you have something like rights that you can't enforce. So in terms of
again, that doesn't impede my argument at all. The rights exist regardless of government. Now, in this case,
you guys are saying
we have a case of a government existing, and they're taking away rights. They are failing to secure rights. And when we see that, why do we argue or why do we bristle when the people of China have no rights? Because we know they should.
Because our philosophy tells us that they do.
We wouldn't give a flip about them.
Yeah, but this is my point. Let me, I'm just going to agree with you. I'm going to say that rights exist no matter what. Just rights are rights, and rights are they grow on trees and they're just natural and they radiate. Right? Yeah, he agrees.
Wow.
So let's just say that. But all I'm saying is that the reason that you would step up and upgrade from mere libertarianism that you're taught from Mises, and then you actually graduate to like the big boy club, is that you realize that, hey, having these ambient rights in nature that don't actually have any effect, like China, like that doesn't matter. Like if you have rights that you can't use, then they don't matter. So the point of the political left libertarianism is to understand that the point of government is to make sure that people on an individual level can enjoy prosperity and freedom and liberty to the greatest extent that's technologically and politically possible, and make that happen. And that's it. And that's how deep you want to get in the philosophy. I'll leave that to the
Well, can I jump in here and just kind
Result
ask you
of using,
Yeah. So I'm just sort of spitballing because I haven't really thought about this before. But what about so if what about if you had so I agree with Chuck. I think that we have natural rights. I think there's universal rights. But sort of going by what you're saying, right? You're saying it doesn't, who cares if you do? Because it doesn't matter, because people can take those away. People who have power, people who have guns, people who have whatever. Point taken. But isn't sort of like over time, like if we go through history, right, that the natural human response to being oppressed is to sort of get their freedom? That it's not something necessarily that that is the instinct, right? Even if they're not able to do it, that's where sort of history has kind of concluded, right?
I will say this far, if you see government as the prime agent to always secure rights, then I would suggest that history has demonstrated that quite often government has done the opposite. It would be a bit like having the fox curate the hen house. It's got a bad track record. I understand what you're saying, that, you know, from a practical standpoint, the people in China, even though they have rights, because the government is not securing those rights, then the rights are practically don't matter. Well, right now, practically they don't matter, but the fact that we as thinking people feel that the Chinese people do have natural rights, that is what our impetus is for trying to get the Chinese government to recognize those rights. If we did not have that innate sense of the rights existing, I don't think we would care very much about what happened to them.
So that desire for freedom is intrinsic, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to an extent, there's a Latin philosopher, Sallust, that said something to the effect, if few men desire liberty, most men wish only for a just master. So this kind of dichotomy between like security and freedom has always existed. If you have too much of one, you probably want some of the other.
Yeah. Solos is where we got the word Solon from. So good fellow.
It was okay. You know,
It was okay. It was immediate.
didn't pay his bills, you know, but whatever.
But I mean, but to boil it down, Nick, just to answer your question, that's the difference between a left and a right libertarian. Is that the right libertarian mindset is that if only we were more like Somalia and there was so much government,
No,
we could live as we please with our guns and our religion and all that. So you know, it is what it is. I think that in a practical sense, you know, we're looking more at what can we get the government to do to ensure that liberty is elevated for mankind. And, you know, and the right does have a certain point in that there have been excesses of government where, you know, government is mankind organized, and much like any evil corporation, a government is just an evil corporation with more guns. So, I mean, you know, certainly there could be a lot of evil from a government as well.
And the power to arrest you, and the power to detain you, and the power to take your property.
I mean,
and legislate your body and tell you what you can and cannot do with your own body.
Which is why you have to control the government and make sure it's always focused on liberty. Because if you don't, the government's going to exist either way. So you just can't ever turn your back on it. You always have to make sure it's pointed towards liberty.
With this argument that I've told you before is, your idea, your strategy for doing that is by empowering the government more, by giving them the ability to universal healthcare, universal this, universal that, right? And I just feel like once you do that, you empower them, and then. So.
Yeah, because then we're dependent on the government.
That's right.
As if you would survive 20 minutes without the government. Like that's just the world we live in now. Like we're an interconnected world.
That might be true, but
my chances.
Right.
I mean, you might, but like, you know, this kind.
Right? I mean, I guess if you say, I don't think giving the government more power over us is necessarily the answer, right?
Okay.
Anyway. All right. So to wrap up, because I have to get going, my wife is like repeatedly texting me right now, which means I'm probably in trouble, or we're supposed to eat dinner or something. So to close this off, I just wanted to kind of get your a feel for where you guys think the election's at. So we'll just kind of go around real quick answers. Art, quick answers. So in 20 seconds or less, who is going to take the presidency and the Senate? We'll start with Art, and then we'll go from there.
Biden wins by, I'm going to say 330 electoral votes.
Wins
Huge.
by, or he wins 330 electoral votes?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're correct. He wins 330 electoral
Okay.
votes and handily defeats Trump by probably a 5-point margin in the popular vote.
Mhm.
I weirdly feel like the Senate is probably going to deadlock. Like it should flip to Democrat. I feel like something's going to go wrong. It'll just peter out. It'll be 50-50. And then the House will expand its Democratic side.
Okay. Chuck?
I agree. Biden wins, getting well in excess of 300 electoral votes. I think the Senate ends in a 2020 tie, unless Tillis can pull it out in North Carolina, which now that his opponent, Cunningham, has admitted to an extramarital affair. We'll see if that...
We forgot to talk about that. Yes,
yeah,
that's a big deal.
that might gum the works up. But right now, I think it's going to be 2020. And with Vice President Harris, yeah, that'll be a de facto Democratic lead in the Senate.
Mark, I forgot your name.
Yeah, me too.
Who's this?
It's okay. I think Trump has still a 1 in 10 chance of pulling this out. I just think the electorate is that unpredictable these days. But I would go Biden victory, and I'm going to buck the trend. I'm going to say Dems 51-49 in the Senate.
Nice.
Will be.
Christine?
It might actually be legislation at some point. Who knows?
I'm with everyone else. I think Biden is going to win, and I think yeah, I'm in agree with Mark about the Senate. I really if you had asked me this last week, I would have said Trump had more of a chance, but not after all of this ridiculousness, after the debate and everything else. Mm-mm.
Okay. So I think it's important to talk about Cunningham because he is in a sex scandal right now, and it's very close to election, and it's in a southern state. So it could have an impact. It's a very close race.
Yeah, I live right on the border of North Carolina, so I get, just through osmosis, a lot of the Carolina information. And Cunningham has been consistently polling ahead of the incumbent Tillis, 5 points, 6 points, 7 points, something like that. We have not had a poll, obviously, since this came out. And of course, it only came out since Friday, so it takes a few days to circulate. But it'll be interesting to see if this has any legs. Now, we also found out this weekend that Tillis tested positive for COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So that might play a role in this wild-ass Senate race down in the Tar Heel state.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I really, I really want to play devil's advocate. I still am a little bit incredulous about Biden's victory, but I mean, looking at the polls, it would just have to be the most massive polling screw up in like the history of everything.
Since 2016. Sorry.
Or much worse for lots of reasons.
2016 wasn't wrong. I mean, Hillary was up by 3 points. She won by 2 in the popular vote.
We talked about that before you came on, Art.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, the national polls were good. The state polling was a little bit off. But the polling right now is even more in Biden's favor, number one. And number two, there were a lot of undecideds, and Hillary never polled above 50%, and Biden consistently does. So there's definitely less undecided voters, which is huge because those were the people that really won it for Trump. However, there's always a chance that something weird happens, right? There could be some October surprise. Who knows? Right. Biden could just go senile in the middle of a debate. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. But I'm going to say Biden wins. I think it's going to be by a smaller margin. I hope it's by a bigger margin. I think it's a 50-50 in the Senate. So that's that. And I just want to thank, it's Christina, right? Not Christine? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Christina.
Yeah. I want to thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
I hope you come back.
Thank you for having me. I would love to. Please invite me.
Awesome. And this was great, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, you got to do your dance.
Can't do it every time. They'll expect it.
dancing at Oktoberfest. Guten Abend, meine Freunde.